So part five, back to Australia, and at the time, myself, and my wife, we were dating, and so I came back to Australia, and we were still dating, and she came over about 6 months later. I moved back to Central Queensland and just got a regular job. I think I was in the mines at the time, and when my wife moved over, we actually moved to the Sunshine Coast, lived down there. I was working construction for about maybe 6 months to a year, something like that. But in that time, my wife always wanted to move back to Canada. Her parents were a lot older, and my mum was 16 when she had me. So mum and dad were quite young, and her sisters were as old as my parents, so she always wanted to go back. And at the time, I couldn't. It was a strange time with visas. We couldn't go back unless we were married. So this is part of the story you're mostly not going to like, but we got married in Nambour. We got married because we both wanted to be together. We didn't really. We were very young. I think we were about 20, maybe 21 at the time. And we just decided to do the marriage thing so that I could go with. I never told any of my family. She never told anybody. And we end up getting married in Nambour Courthouse. I still remember going down, and the person got a couple of people from the office downstairs to be the witnesses. My partner at the time was not impressed. It was just a weird thing. I don't think we were committed enough to get married, but we wanted to be together. It was very strange. So we got married. She enrolled in school back in Canada. I had to get a few things tied up here, so I waited here for a while before my visa was approved, before moving back. I didn't actually tell my parents that I was married for about 2 years. And it wasn't until one day at Turkey Beach, fighting a bushfire with my dad, that I was sitting out the back, and I said, I've got something to tell you. I don't think you're going to like it. And he said, just tell me, everything's cool. And then I said, look, I got married a couple of years ago, but I just never told you. And he goes, I can't believe it. He was pretty cool. He was drinking a beer, and he goes, well, you got to tell your mother now. And I said, I just don't want to. And he goes, well, this is the deal. I know, so I'm going to give you 7 days before you can tell her or I can tell her. And I can tell you where it's better going to be coming from. So then the pressure was on. He goes, that's how marriage works. There are no secrets. Now you've told me this secret. Unfortunately, I have to pass that secret on to my wife. So I told my mum, and Mum was very disappointed in me. She was just disappointed that she would have liked to have been there, and I'll always regret certain things, and that would have been it. And Mum and my wife always got along, and years later, they were great friends, a lot of respect, and Mum would have just liked to have been there no matter what the circumstances were. So you talk about the green card, but we were in love. It was just, very young. You weren't sure. So packed up, and I immigrated to Canada because I had such a good time in that first year that I thought if you had a great time in the nightclub the first time, the second time's going to be awesome. Well, that wasn't the case. So we flew over to Vancouver, full immigration. I remember having my life savings in an envelope back then, and arrived on New Year's Eve, which was, January 31st. In Vancouver, it is completely dark. It sort of lightly snowed. So the cold was, I forgot how cold it was. I forgot how dark it is. it wasn't like this beautiful snow. Vancouver gets a lot of rain, a lot of snow, and when it mixes together in that freezing, it's ice. I got there and I can't say it was a warm reception from my new in-laws. Let's just say that. It was a very big culture shock because my wife was from a different culture, and I just felt the whole thing was a big culture shock. I'd moved from Australia, where it was the middle of summer, to North America, to the coldest, wettest, darkest place on earth, which was Vancouver. And it was just extremely hard starting in the middle of winter. I worked construction back then, and construction was very seasonal. So it took me a long time to get a job, and it was like I'd went through a lot of different things to get stable. And it took a while. And to be honest, even the living situation, everything about it was hard the second time. From what I remember to what I was happening on this time was completely different. So that sort of leads me into a couple of things. I eventually got work in construction. I was a heavy equipment operator, but it was very seasonal. And I worked like that for a couple of years. And because I worked essentially for an agency, I didn't get to know the same people all the time. I missed my family back in Australia. I missed the friends that I had back in Australia. And this was hard. There's no question. And this would have been the first time that I really started suffering from depression from the long winters. And I had no family over there. And it was very hard to meet people the second time around. It wasn't what I remembered the first time. And I really suffered. My wife actually bought me a dog. And ironically enough, this will come into play, that her name was Oreo. Oreo was a great companion. And it just gave me sort of somebody to talk to and something to hang around with. So over the next couple of years, I bounced around and had to, worked at different companies, didn't really have any stability. I would come back to Australia and visit over the Christmas time to get out of the winters, but I would predominantly head back. And then I just needed to meet some people. So I made up a fake resume to get a job as a bartender. Look, years ago in the Sizzler days, back in 1988, I worked at Sizzler in Carindale in Brisbane, and I got a job. I ended up doing a bartending course, but really I was just serving, I think, rum and cokes and a lot of Pepsi and wasn't really bartending. But I made up this fake resume because I thought I could do it. I had a mindset that I could do it, and that's what I did. And and it would give me some stability over the winter, and I would meet some people. And so I love aviation, I always have. So I thought, what a better place to work. I was always excited being at an airport. I thought I would go to the airport and hand out my resume to all the different bars at Vancouver International Airport. And that's exactly what I did. And lo and behold, I got a job at Stanley's Bar in Arrivals. Stanley's was a unique bar because I thought I'd be working with other bartenders that would actually be able to show me something. But because I said I had a lot of experience in Australia, this was a one bartender bar. And my training was 2 hours and basically getting to know the POS system, the cash system, and where to drop it off. And as for the bartending, they figure I knew it. So I had 2 hours of training, and then that bartender left, and I was left there all alone. And talk about faking it till you make it. My first couple of drinks were just crazy because the first drink was called a brown cow. And I said to the guy, hey, look, we must really make it different in Australia. How do you make it here? And he said, well, it's Kahlua and milk or Bailey's and milk. So, and it just got worse from there. Pina colada. But I had to learn fast, and that's what I've done. And that's what I did do. Stay tuned.